The crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the grand ballroom of the Riverside Plaza Hotel. It was the annual Summit Charity Gala, where Portland's elite gathered in designer suits and silk dresses, champagne glasses catching the light like tiny stars. Outside, the October rain painted the windows in streaks, blurring the city lights into watercolor smudges. Inside, wealth whispered in polished accents, laughter echoing off marble floors. Marcus Thornton stood near the auction table, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. At 42, he'd built Thornton Development from nothing into a $100 million empire. Tonight's event was his stage, his company the primary sponsor. The banner behind the podium read, "Building Tomorrow's Communities, Thornton Development Cares." Marcus had paid $50,000 for that banner placement alone. He surveyed the room with satisfaction. Senators, CEOs, philanthropists, all here because of him. His assistant Jennifer approached with a tablet. "Mr. Thornton, we've raised $200,000 already. The live auction starts in 20 minutes. Marcus nodded without looking at her. His attention had shifted to the entrance where something was disrupting the carefully curated atmosphere. The sound reached him first, not the gentle murmur of cocktail conversation, but something deeper, rougher, laughter that didn't match the room's frequency. Marcus turned fully now, his jaw tightening. 6 men had entered through the main doors. They wore leather vests over flannel shirts, jeans that had seen real work, and boots that tracked faint moisture across the polished floor. The vests bore patches, an eagle clutching an American flag, the words Iron Brotherhood MC stitched in bold letters. Their ages ranged from mid-30s to late 50s, faces weathered by sun and experience. The tallest one, a man with silver threading through his dark beard, held the door for the woman beside him. She was elderly, maybe 70, wearing a simple blue dress and clutching a worn handbag. Her eyes were bright with wonder as she took in the ballroom. Marcus felt his chest tighten with irritation. This was a $500 per plate event. Invitation only. He'd personally approved every name on the guest list. These people didn't belong here. Security should have stopped them at the entrance. Where was Gregory? The bikers moved further into the room, and conversations began to pause. Women in evening gowns shifted uncomfortably. Men in tuxedos exchanged glances. The tallest biker, his vest patch read Chain's President, was speaking softly to the elderly woman, guiding her gently toward the silent auction displays. Marcus set down his champagne glass. The click against the marble table was sharp. Jennifer touched his arm. "Mr. Thornton, should I—" "I'll handle it." He crossed the ballroom with purposeful strides, his Italian leather shoes making no sound on the floor. Around him, the elite of Portland watched. This was his event, his reputation. These bikers were a stain on his carefully constructed image. Marcus reached them just as Chains was pointing out one of the auction items to the elderly woman, a weekend package at a coastal resort. "Excuse me." Marcus's voice was cold, controlled. Professional disdain wrapped in politeness. "I'm afraid there's been a mistake." Chains turned slowly. Up close, Marcus could see the man was older than he'd first appeared, maybe 55. His face carried lines that spoke of years lived hard but honest. Gray eyes met Marcus's with calm recognition. "A mistake?" Chains asked quietly. "This is a private event, invitation only. I'm going to have to ask you and your friends to leave." The elderly woman looked up, confused. One of the other bikers, younger with a scar across his cheekbone, tensed visibly. But Chains raised a hand slightly, keeping everyone calm. "We were invited," Chains said, his voice steady, not argumentative, simply stating fact. Marcus smiled without warmth. "I personally approved every invitation. I can assure you, you weren't on the list." "Marcus Thornton?" The voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to see Catherine Wells, the event coordinator, hurrying over with a clipboard. Catherine was 60, had run charity events for 20 years, and looked genuinely distressed. "Catherine, please escort these gentlemen out." "Quietly." Catherine's face flushed. "Mr. Thornton, there's been a misunderstanding. The Iron Brotherhood is—" "I don't care what they call themselves. This is a professional event. Look at them. They're disrupting the atmosphere." Around them, more conversations had stopped. The ballroom had grown quieter, guests now openly staring. Marcus felt vindicated. Everyone could see these bikers didn't belong. Chains's expression hadn't changed, but something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, something sadder. Disappointment, maybe. The elderly woman touched Chains's arm. "It's okay, honey. We can go." "Mrs. Morrison, you don't have to—" Chains started. "Security." Marcus raised his hand, and 2 uniformed guards appeared from the perimeter of the room. "Please show these people to the exit." "Mr. Thornton, please, if you'd just let me explain—" Catherine tried again, her voice desperate now. "Catherine, your job is to manage this event, not to argue with me. If you can't do that, I'll find someone who can." Catherine's mouth closed. Her face went pale. The security guards positioned themselves near the bikers. Not touching, but present. A clear message. Chains looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he nodded once, placed his hand on Mrs. Morrison's back, and turned toward the exit. The other 5 bikers fell in around them, forming a protective circle around the elderly woman. As they walked toward the doors, the ballroom remained silent. Every eye followed them. Marcus stood straight, arms crossed, watching them go. This was his event. His rules. No one disrupted what he'd built. The doors closed behind the bikers with a soft click. Immediately, the murmur of conversation resumed. Someone laughed nervously. A waiter began circulating with champagne again. The gala returned to its scheduled programming. Marcus turned back to the auction table, where Jennifer stood frozen, her face unreadable. "Problem solved," Marcus said. "Let's get back on schedule." But Jennifer was looking at her phone, her fingers scrolling rapidly. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Mr. Thornton." "What?" She turned the phone toward him. On the screen was a news article from 3 days ago. The headline read, "Iron Brotherhood MC raises $400,000 for veterans' medical care. Local heroes continue decade of service." Below it was a photo. The same 6 bikers Marcus had just ejected, standing with a group of wounded veterans outside the VA hospital. Chains stood in the center, shaking hands with a young man in a wheelchair. Marcus's stomach dropped. Jennifer scrolled down. More photos. The Iron Brotherhood delivering Thanksgiving meals to homeless shelters. Teaching motorcycle safety classes to at-risk youth. Building wheelchair ramps for disabled veterans. The elderly woman from tonight, Mrs. Morrison, featured prominently in several photos. The caption identified her as Gold Star Mother Helen Morrison, whose son died in Afghanistan. The Iron Brotherhood has supported Mrs. Morrison for 12 years. "Oh God," Jennifer whispered. "Mr. Thornton, they were invited." Catherine added them to the list last week. "They donated $25,000 to tonight's charity, the biggest single donation we received." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Catherine approached again, her clipboard clutched to her chest, her eyes brimming with tears. When she spoke, her voice shook. "The Iron Brotherhood has supported the Children's Hospital Fund for 8 years. They were invited as guests of honor. Mrs. Morrison's grandson is being treated there for leukemia. She wanted to see where their donations go. I tried to tell you, I tried." The ballroom suddenly felt too bright, too loud. Marcus looked around and saw faces he recognized. Judge Patricia Hammond, watching him with open disapproval. Senator David Chen, shaking his head slowly. Carol Ann Fisher, CEO of Fisher Pharmaceuticals and one of his biggest investors, already typing on her phone. At the entrance, the doors remained closed. The bikers were gone. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again, and again. He pulled it out. Text messages were flooding in, emails, notifications from social media. Someone had recorded the ejection on their phone. The video was already spreading. "Mr. Thornton," Jennifer said quietly, "we have a serious problem." Marcus stared at the closed doors, his mind racing. The bikers had left without argument, without scene. They'd simply walked away with dignity, protecting the elderly woman from further discomfort. And he'd called them disruptive. For the first time in 20 years of business, Marcus Thornton had no idea what to do next. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel, because you won't want to miss what happens when power meets pride and everyone watches the fall. The gala continued around Marcus like a performance he was no longer directing. Waiters moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency. The string quartet resumed playing, but the energy had shifted. Conversations carried an edge now, voices lowered when he approached, eyes sliding away from direct contact. Marcus stood near the auction table, phone in hand, watching his reputation crumble in real time. The video had been posted by Amanda Richfield, a socialite with 200,000 Instagram followers. She'd titled it, "Businessman Kicks Out Veterans and Gold Star Mom from Charity Event." The footage was clear, devastating. Marcus's cold expression, his dismissive gesture toward chains, the elderly woman's confused face as security approached. The comment section was filling rapidly. Disgusting. These bikers do more for our community than this suit ever will. Thornton Development? Never buying from them. The Iron Brotherhood raised money for my nephew's surgery. This man is heartless. Jennifer stood beside him, her face pale. Mr. Thornton, Senator Chen just left. He was supposed to speak during the live auction. Marcus didn't respond. He was reading an email from Richard Pastore, CEO of Pastore Construction. They had a $12 million project in negotiation. The email was brief. Marcus, we need to talk. Reconsidering our partnership after tonight's incident. Another email loaded. Carol Ann Fisher. I'm removing Fisher Pharmaceuticals as a sponsor of your upcoming development summit. Please don't contact me. His phone rang. The screen showed Harold Thornton, his father. Marcus stepped toward the windows, pressing the phone to his ear. Rain continued to streak the glass, the city beyond a blur of lights. Dad, what the hell did you do? Harold's voice was ice. At 71, he'd built the foundation Marcus had expanded. A retired Marine, he valued three things: honor, service, and loyalty. There was a misunderstanding. I'm watching you humiliate veterans on the internet, Marcus. Veterans and a Gold Star mother. Do you have any idea what you've done? I didn't know who they were. They showed up in leather vests, and I thought, you didn't think. That's the problem. You saw people who looked different from your country club friends and assumed they were beneath you. Marcus closed his eyes. I'll fix this. How? The video has 50,000 views already. Your name is trending on social media, and not in a good way. I built this company on trust and integrity. You're destroying that in one night. Dad, please. I'm getting calls from board members. They want an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Be prepared to answer for this. The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone, staring at his reflection in the rain-streaked window. The golden light of the ballroom made him look ghostly, insubstantial. Behind him, Catherine was speaking with a group of guests. He couldn't hear the words, but he saw their faces. Shock, disappointment, anger. His phone buzzed again. A notification from Twitter. Someone had dug up the news article about the Iron Brotherhood's charity work and paired it with the video of Marcus ejecting them. The tweet read, "While Marcus Thornton hosts fancy dinners, the Iron Brotherhood actually helps people. Guess which one got kicked out tonight?" 3,000 retweets in 15 minutes. Jennifer touched his shoulder gently. Mr. Thornton, the Portland Tribune is calling. They want a statement. Tell them no comment. That might make it worse. I said no comment. She nodded and stepped away. Marcus could see her hands shaking as she typed a response on her phone. Across the ballroom, Judge Hammond was gathering her coat. She'd been scheduled to participate in the live auction, bidding on items to drive up prices for charity. Now she was leaving early, her expression glacial as she passed Marcus without acknowledgement. The live auction began anyway, but the energy was wrong. Bids came slowly, amounts lower than expected. The auctioneer's voice carried false enthusiasm, trying to recapture momentum that had already bled out through the doors with the Iron Brotherhood. Marcus's phone rang again. Unknown number. Thornton. Mr. Thornton, this is David Park from Channel 8 News. We're running a story about tonight's incident at the charity gala. Would you like to comment on why you ejected veterans and a Gold Star mother from an event your company sponsored? I have no comment. We've reached out to the Iron Brotherhood for their side. They've declined to speak publicly, but several veterans organizations have issued statements condemning your actions. Do you plan to apologize? Marcus ended the call without answering. His hands were shaking now. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. He'd spent 2 decades building an empire, cultivating relationships, creating an image of success and philanthropy. One mistake couldn't erase all of that. Could it? Jennifer returned, her face even paler than before. Mr. Thornton, we have another problem. The Children's Hospital Fund just released a statement. She showed him her phone. The hospital's official account had posted, "We are deeply disappointed by tonight's events at the Summit Charity Gala. The Iron Brotherhood MC has been a steadfast supporter of pediatric cancer research for 8 years. Their compassion and generosity embody the spirit of giving. We stand with them." Below the statement, someone had shared a photo. It showed Chains sitting beside a small boy in a hospital bed. The boy was bald from chemotherapy, wearing an Iron Brotherhood patch on his hospital gown, smiling widely. The caption read, "Because of the Iron Brotherhood's fundraising, little Michael received the treatment that saved his life. These are the people Marcus Thornton called disruptive." The post had been shared 12,000 times. Marcus felt the walls closing in. He'd built his entire identity on being untouchable, on controlling every narrative, every outcome. But this was spinning beyond his control, velocity increasing with every passing minute. "Mr. Thornton?" Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper. "What do we do?" He had no answer. The gala ended early. Guests filtered out in small groups, their departure quiet and swift. No one approached Marcus to say goodbye. No one thanked him for hosting. They simply left, leaving the ballroom feeling vast and hollow, the chandeliers casting light on empty tables and abandoned champagne glasses. By 11 p.m., only Marcus, Jennifer, and Catherine remained. The catering staff had cleaned up and departed. The string quartet had packed their instruments an hour ago. Now it was just the 3 of them in a space built for 300. Catherine approached slowly, her clipboard long since abandoned. Her makeup was smudged from crying. "Mr. Thornton, I need to resign." Marcus looked up from his phone, where he'd been watching the damage multiply across social media. "What? I can't work for someone who treats people like that. The Iron Brotherhood. They're good men. They help people. And you humiliated them. You humiliated Mrs. Morrison. Her grandson is 7 years old and fighting for his life, and tonight was supposed to be special for her. Catherine, I didn't know." "You didn't ask. You saw their clothes and made a judgment. I tried to tell you. I tried. But you were so concerned about appearances, about what your wealthy friends would think, that you didn't even listen." The words landed like physical blows. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the evidence was stacked against him in thousands of shares, comments, and condemning statements. Catherine pulled an envelope from her purse and placed it on the table. "My resignation. Effective immediately. I've worked in this industry for 20 years. I've never been ashamed of an event I coordinated until tonight." She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the empty ballroom. "Catherine, wait." But she didn't stop. The doors closed behind her with quiet finality. Jennifer was crying now, trying to hide it by looking down at her tablet. "Mr. Thornton, I've been receiving emails all evening. The Riverside Hotel wants to discuss our contract for the annual Developers Summit. Northwest Banking Group is pulling their sponsorship for the spring fundraiser. Patterson and Klein Law Firm is reviewing their corporate ties with Thornton Development." "How much?" Marcus asked, his voice hollow. "Sir? How much damage? In dollars." Jennifer's fingers moved across the tablet screen. "Canceled contracts, withdrawn sponsorships, projects under review. Preliminary estimates are around $8 million. But that's just direct losses. Brand damage, future business impact. It could be much higher. $8 million in one night because of one decision." Marcus sat down heavily in one of the empty chairs. The crystal chandelier above him swayed slightly in the air current from the heating vents, sending shadows dancing across the floor. His phone buzzed again. Another email. Another cancellation. Another piece of his empire cracking. He thought about the bikers. The way they'd left without argument, protecting the elderly woman from further discomfort. The dignity in their silence. While he'd stood there, arms crossed, convinced of his own righteousness. "Sir, what do you want me to tell these people?" Jennifer asked. Marcus looked at his reflection in the darkened windows. The rain had stopped, leaving the glass clear. He could see himself perfectly now. Expensive suit, platinum cufflinks, an empty ballroom behind him, and for the first time in his life, he saw the truth. He'd built an empire on appearances and forgotten what actually mattered. "Tell them I need time to think," he said quietly. But even as he said it, Marcus knew that thinking wasn't going to fix this. The damage was done. The video was permanent. The internet never forgot. His phone buzzed one more time. A text message from an unknown number. "You had a chance to do something right tonight. You chose pride over people. That's who you are now." Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he stood, straightened his tie, and walked out of the ballroom alone. Behind him, the lights clicked off one by one, leaving only darkness and the faint smell of champagne and regret. The morning light came harsh through Marcus's penthouse windows. He hadn't slept. Instead, he'd spent the night watching the digital wildfire spread, each notification a fresh wound. By 6 a.m., the video had 200,000 views. News outlets across the state were running the story. National media had picked it up. His phone showed 47 missed calls. Marcus stood in his kitchen, coffee untouched on the marble counter, staring at the headline on the Portland Tribune's website. "Development mogul ejects veterans from charity gala. Community outraged." The article was thorough and damning. It included interviews with people who'd attended the gala, quotes from veterans organizations, and a detailed history of the Iron Brotherhood's charitable work. One line cut particularly deep. "Marcus Thornton claims to build communities, but last night he showed what he really values: exclusivity over compassion, image over integrity." His father's words echoed, "Be prepared to answer for this." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Marcus had 2 hours to figure out how to salvage 20 years of work. He showered, dressed in his most conservative suit, and drove to Thornton Development's headquarters in silence. The radio stayed off. He couldn't bear to hear his name mentioned again. The building stood 30 stories tall in downtown Portland, glass and steel reflecting the morning sun. Marcus had designed it himself, a monument to success. His parking space had his name in gold letters, Marcus Thornton, CEO. This morning, someone had spray-painted over it. The words were crude but clear. Shame. Marcus parked anyway, stepping carefully around the paint. Security would clean it. Everything could be cleaned eventually. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than usual. Marcus watched the numbers climb, each floor representing a deal he'd closed, a project he'd completed, a victory he'd earned. But this morning, they felt hollow. The boardroom was already full when he arrived. 12 faces, all serious, all watching him with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely concealed anger. Harold Thornton sat at the far end of the table, his Marine bearing still evident at 71. He didn't meet his son's eyes. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table. The chair felt like a throne under siege. "Gentlemen, ladies, I know why we're here." Patricia Lansing, the board's vice chair, spoke first. Her voice was measured but cold. "Marcus, we've received communications from investors, partners, and clients all morning. The sentiment is uniform. Your actions last night have damaged this company's reputation severely." "I made a mistake," Marcus began, but Richard Montgomery cut him off. "A mistake is miscalculating a bid. What you did last night was something else entirely. You humiliated veterans at a charity event. You ejected a Gold Star mother. This isn't a PR problem, Marcus. This is a character problem." The words hung in the air like smoke. Harold finally looked up. "The Iron Brotherhood MC has done more for this community than most corporations 10 times our size. They've raised millions for veterans, families, hospitals. They're respected, honored. And my son treated them like criminals because they wore leather instead of silk." "I didn't know who they were," Marcus said, the defense sounding weak even to his own ears. "You didn't ask," Patricia said sharply. "That's the problem. You saw people who didn't fit your image of success and made an assumption, and now we're all paying for it." Jennifer had provided him with the latest numbers before the meeting. Marcus pulled them up on his tablet. "Current losses stand at $8.3 million. 17 partnerships are under review. We've lost 6 major contracts pending final signature. Social media sentiment is 92% negative. Our stock price dropped 7% in pre-market trading." The numbers should have felt like abstractions. Instead, they felt like a countdown to the end of everything he'd built. The question, Harold said, is what you're going to do about it. Marcus had spent the night thinking about that. He'd drafted a public apology, revised it 6 times, then deleted it. Words felt insufficient. I'll issue a formal apology. I'll make a significant donation to veterans organizations. I'll step down from public-facing roles until this settles. That's not enough, Patricia said. The community wants accountability. Your apology will sound like damage control because that's what it is. Donations will look like you're trying to buy forgiveness. This isn't about your money, Marcus. It's about what you revealed about yourself. The words stung because they were true. Richard leaned forward. We've been discussing options all morning. The board feels that the best path forward might be for you to take a leave of absence. Let someone else run the company while the heat dies down. Marcus's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. You want me to step down? Temporarily, Patricia clarified. Until we can rebuild our reputation. Your face is the face of this scandal. Every time people see you, they'll remember last night. He looked at his father. Harold's expression was unreadable, but he didn't disagree with the others. How long? 6 months minimum, Richard said. Give the media time to move on. Give the community time to heal. Give us time to repair the damage. 6 months. Half a year away from the empire he'd built. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. And if I refuse? Patricia's expression hardened. Then we'll vote, and I don't think you'll like the outcome. The threat was clear. Refuse to step down voluntarily, and they'd force him out permanently. Marcus looked around the table. These were people he'd worked with for years, people he'd considered allies. But their faces showed no mercy now. I need time to think. You have until end of business today, Harold said. The board votes at 5 p.m. if we haven't heard from you. The meeting ended. Board members filed out without the usual small talk or handshakes. Marcus sat alone at the table, staring at the view through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below, indifferent to his crisis. His phone buzzed. Jennifer. Mr. Thornton, Channel 8 is outside the building. They want a statement. He didn't respond. Another buzz. An email from Sarah Chen, his lawyer. Marcus, we need to discuss legal implications. The Iron Brotherhood could pursue action for defamation or discrimination. Call me. He turned the phone face down on the table. The office felt like a cage. Marcus stood and walked to the windows, pressing his palm against the cool glass. From 30 stories up, people looked like ants. Cars were toys. The world reduced to something manageable, controllable. But he couldn't control this. The video had a life of its own now, spreading beyond Portland, beyond Oregon, becoming a national symbol of privilege and prejudice. His name was becoming synonymous with everything people hated about the wealthy elite. He thought about the Iron Brotherhood. They hadn't spoken to the media, hadn't threatened lawsuits. They'd simply accepted his rejection with dignity and moved on. That quiet grace made everything worse. Marcus's phone rang. Against his better judgment, he answered. Thornton. Mr. Thornton, this is Thomas Riley from the New York Times. We're running a piece on the economic impact of viral shaming in the digital age. Your situation is our primary case study. Would you care to comment? No. We've documented similar cases where public figures faced consequences for discriminatory behavior. In most instances, the financial damage was permanent. Do you think... Marcus ended the call. The New York Times. This had reached the New York Times. He sank into his chair, the weight of it all finally breaking through his defenses. For 20 years, he'd believed success meant being untouchable. That money and power created a buffer between him and consequences. One night had proven him catastrophically wrong. His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't news. It was a text from Catherine, his former event coordinator. The Iron Brotherhood is holding a press conference at noon. Thought you should know. Marcus checked the time. 11:30. He had 30 minutes to decide whether to watch them destroy what remained of his reputation. He turned on the television in his office and waited. At noon exactly, the press conference began. The location was the Veterans Memorial Park, a place Marcus had donated money to 3 years ago during a different PR campaign. The irony wasn't lost on him. Chains stood at a podium, flanked by the 5 other bikers from last night. Mrs. Morrison sat in a chair beside them, her grandson on her lap. The boy wore a bandana over his head, his small frame swallowed by an oversized Iron Brotherhood hoodie. Media from every local station crowded the area. Cameras flashed. Reporters called out questions. Chains raised a hand and the crowd quieted. When he spoke, his voice was measured, calm, carrying the weight of someone who'd learned to choose words carefully. My name is James McClellan, but most people call me Chains. I'm the president of the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. Last night, my brothers and I, along with Mrs. Helen Morrison, were asked to leave a charity event at the Riverside Plaza Hotel. We're here to address what happened and to set the record straight. Marcus leaned forward, his heart pounding. First, I want to be clear about something. We're not here for revenge. We're not here to destroy anyone's reputation or to demand apologies. That's not who we are. The statement surprised Marcus. After everything, they weren't going to crucify him publicly? Chains continued. The Iron Brotherhood was founded 12 years ago by veterans who wanted to give back to the community that supported us during our deployments and when we came home. We've raised over $3 million for veterans' medical care, family support, and children's hospitals. We do this because we believe service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. He gestured to Mrs. Morrison. Mrs. Helen Morrison is a Gold Star mother. Her son, Captain David Morrison, died in Afghanistan in 2011. We've had the honor of supporting her and her family ever since. Last night, we were invited to the charity gala because we've contributed significantly to the Children's Hospital Fund that was benefiting from the event. A reporter shouted a question. Did Marcus Thornton know who you were when he asked you to leave? Chains shook his head. I don't believe he did. He saw our vests, our appearance, and made a judgment. It was wrong, but it was human. We all make mistakes when we let assumptions guide our actions instead of taking the time to understand. The grace in that statement felt like salt in Marcus's wounds. However, Chains said, his voice taking on a firmer edge, what happened last night represents a larger problem. It showed how easily people dismiss those who look different, who come from different backgrounds. We were judged not by our actions or our character, but by our clothing and our appearance. Another reporter called out, Are you planning legal action against Thornton Development? No. Like I said, this isn't about revenge. But we do hope this incident sparks a conversation about prejudice, about how we treat people, about remembering that dignity isn't determined by wealth or appearance. Mrs. Morrison spoke then, her voice soft but clear. I was embarrassed last night. I felt like I didn't belong somewhere I was invited to be. But my grandson always tells me that the best people are the ones who stand up when others need help. She squeezed the boy on her lap. The Iron Brotherhood stood up for me. They always do. The press conference continued for 20 more minutes. Chains answered questions with patience and clarity. He never once attacked Marcus personally. Instead, he spoke about community, service, and the importance of looking beyond surface judgments. When it ended, Marcus turned off the television and sat in silence. They'd had every right to destroy him. The public would have eaten it up. Instead, they'd taken the high road, showing more class and character than he'd shown them. The contrast was devastating. His phone buzzed. Jennifer. Sir, social media response to the press conference is overwhelmingly positive. People are praising the Iron Brotherhood's grace and condemning your actions even more strongly by comparison. We need a response. Marcus stared at the message. What could he possibly say that wouldn't sound hollow after what he'd just witnessed? He thought about that moment at the gala when he'd called security. The certainty he'd felt. The absolute conviction that he was right. That these people didn't belong in his carefully curated world. Now, watching how they'd handled his cruelty with dignity, he saw the truth clearly. He was the one who didn't belong. Not in their world. Not in any world where character mattered more than appearance. His father's words came back to him. That's who you are now. But did it have to be? Marcus stood, grabbed his coat, and walked out of his office. Jennifer looked up as he passed her desk. Sir, the board vote is in 4 hours. Where are you going? To make a choice, Marcus said. And for the first time in 24 hours, he felt like he might actually know what the right choice was. The Veterans Memorial Park was quiet when Marcus arrived. The media had packed up and left. The crowds had dispersed. Only a few people remained, walking the pathways between monuments dedicated to fallen soldiers. Marcus parked his Mercedes in the public lot, feeling out of place even in this open space. He'd attended the park's dedication ceremony 3 years ago, had stood on stage and given a speech about honor and sacrifice while photographers captured his carefully practiced expressions of solemn respect. He hadn't been back since. Now, walking the stone pathways, he noticed details he'd ignored that day. Names carved into marble, dates that marked young lives cut short, flowers placed by families who still grieved. He found the Iron Brotherhood near the Vietnam Memorial Wall. 6 motorcycles parked in a neat line, chrome catching the afternoon sun. The bikers stood together, speaking in low voices with Mrs. Morrison and her grandson. Marcus stopped several feet away, suddenly unsure. His expensive suit felt like armor now, but worthless armor, protecting nothing. Chains noticed him first. The conversation stopped. 5 bikers turned to look at him, their expressions neutral but wary. Marcus walked closer, his heart hammering. This was nothing like the boardroom. No scripted remarks, no prepared defenses. Just the truth, raw and uncomfortable. "Mr. McClellan," Marcus said, his voice rough. "May I speak with you?" Chains studied him for a long moment, then nodded. He said something quiet to the others, then walked a few steps away. Marcus followed. They stood before a monument to the Korean War. Bronze soldiers frozen mid-battle, faces etched with determination. "I watched your press conference," Marcus began. "You could have destroyed me. You chose not to. Why?" Chains looked at the statue, not at Marcus. "Because destruction isn't justice. You made a mistake, a bad one. But I've made mistakes too. We all have. What you said about judgment and assumptions, you were right. I saw your vests and decided who you were without knowing anything about you. That was inexcusable." Yes, it was. The blunt agreement stung, but Marcus accepted it. "I want to apologize, formally, publicly, whatever it takes to make this right." Chains finally turned to face him. "Why? To save your company? To stop the bleeding in your bank account?" Marcus wanted to lie, to say the right thing that would make him look better. But standing here, in this place dedicated to people who'd sacrificed everything, lies felt obscene. "Partly, yes," he admitted. "I'm losing millions. My board wants me out. My reputation is destroyed. But," he paused, searching for words that felt true. "I watched you at that press conference speaking with grace about something I did out of arrogance. I watched Mrs. Morrison explain how the Brotherhood stood up for her, and I realized I've spent 20 years building an empire while forgetting what actually matters. Which is? People. Service. Doing the right thing even when it's hard." Chains was silent for a moment, considering. Then he said, "You want to know what really bothered me about last night?" "Yes." "It wasn't the embarrassment. We're used to people judging us by our appearance. It was Mrs. Morrison. She was so excited to attend that gala. Her grandson is 7 years old and fighting leukemia. She wanted to see where the money we raised was going, wanted to feel part of something bigger than hospital rooms and treatments. You took that from her." The words landed like physical blows. Marcus closed his eyes, shame flooding through him. "I'm sorry. I'm so profoundly sorry." "Tell her, not me." Marcus looked over at the elderly woman. She sat on a bench, her grandson playing nearby with toy soldiers on the monument's steps. Even from a distance, he could see her gentle expression, the way she watched the boy with love and fear intertwined. "I don't know if she'll listen to me. Only one way to find out." Marcus walked slowly toward Mrs. Morrison. The other bikers watched, but didn't intervene. When he reached her, he removed his expensive watch, a symbol of everything he'd valued, and set it on the bench beside him. A small gesture, but meaningful. "Mrs. Morrison, my name is Marcus Thornton. I'm the man who asked you to leave the gala last night." She looked up at him. Her eyes were sharp despite her age, assessing him with the wisdom of someone who'd lived through real loss. "I know who you are. I came to apologize. What I did was cruel and inexcusable. You were invited as a guest of honor, and I treated you like an intruder. I judged you by appearance instead of character. I'm deeply ashamed." She was silent for a long time, watching her grandson play. Then she said, "Do you know what my son used to say?" "No, ma'am." "He said the measure of a man isn't what he does when people are watching. It's what he does when he thinks no one will notice. Last night you thought removing us quietly wouldn't matter, but kindness matters. Respect matters. Even when cameras aren't rolling." Her words cut deeper than any board meeting reprimand. "You're right. I failed that test. I failed basic human decency because I was more concerned about appearances than people." Mrs. Morrison looked at him fully now. "My grandson asks me every day if he's brave enough to beat this sickness. I tell him bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when it's hard." Marcus knelt down so he was at her eye level. "I want to do the right thing now. I want to make amends. Not for publicity or to save my company, but because what I did was wrong. Tell me how." She studied his face for a long moment. Then she said, "The Iron Brotherhood is holding a fundraiser next month for the Children's Hospital. We're trying to raise money for a new cancer treatment wing. Your presence would mean something. Not your money, your time, your willingness to show you've learned. I'll be there. I give you my word." "Words are easy, Mr. Thornton. Actions are what count." "Yes, ma'am." She nodded once, then turned back to watching her grandson. Marcus stood, his knees protesting the movement. He walked back to Chains, who'd been watching the entire exchange. "She's wise," Marcus said. "Gold Star mothers usually are. They've earned it through loss most of us can't imagine." Marcus looked at the bikers gathered near the motorcycles. Men who spent their free time helping others, who'd built a brotherhood on service and loyalty. Everything he'd claimed to value in his corporate mission statements but had failed to actually practice. The press conference, "You said this should spark a conversation. What kind of conversation?" Chains leaned against one of the monuments. "About how we see people. About remembering that everyone has a story, a struggle, something that makes them human beyond what we see on the surface. You're a businessman, right? You understand value. People's value isn't in their bank accounts or their clothes. It's in their character, their actions, their willingness to help others. I lost sight of that. A lot of people do. Success can be blinding that way." Marcus's phone buzzed. He ignored it. "My board wants me to step down. Take a leave of absence while they clean up my mess." "Are you going to?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to fight to prove I can fix this. But another part wonders if stepping aside is the right thing. Not for me, but for everyone affected by what I did." "That's a question only you can answer," Chains said. "But I'll tell you this. The difference between a mistake and a pattern is what you do next. One bad choice doesn't define you. How you respond to it does." The words settled over Marcus like a weight and a gift simultaneously. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it. "Jennifer. Board meeting starting in 2 hours. They need your decision." Marcus looked at Chains. "The fundraiser next month. Can I help? Not just attend, but actually contribute? Set up, coordinate, whatever you need?" Chains raised an eyebrow. "You want to volunteer? I need to learn what real service looks like. I've been writing checks and calling it charity. I want to understand what you and your brothers do, what it means to actually help people." For the first time, Chains smiled slightly. "All right. We meet at the community center every Thursday to plan, 7 p.m. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty." "I'll be there." They shook hands. Chains' grip was firm, calloused from real work. Marcus's hand felt soft by comparison. As Marcus walked back to his car, he passed Mrs. Morrison again. Her grandson ran up to him, holding a toy soldier. "Are you really sorry?" the boy asked, his voice high and clear. Marcus knelt down again. "Yes, I am. Very sorry. Grandma says sorry only counts if you change. Are you going to change?" Out of the mouths of children. "I'm going to try. That's a promise." The boy considered this, then handed Marcus the toy soldier. "This is Captain America. He always tries to do the right thing. You can borrow him to help you remember." Marcus took the small plastic figure, his throat tight. "Thank you. I'll take good care of him." The boy ran back to his grandmother. Marcus stood, toy soldier in hand, and walked to his car. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time, turning the small figure over in his hands. A child's toy, worth maybe $2. But in this moment, it felt more valuable than anything in his penthouse. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Jennifer. Sir, schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning, and tell the board I'll attend their meeting. But I need to speak first. What are you going to say? Marcus looked at the toy soldier on his dashboard. The truth. Finally. He started the car and drove back to downtown Portland. But for the first time in 24 hours, the weight on his chest felt slightly lighter. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing mistakes. Maybe it was about owning them and doing better. He had a lot to learn. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Thornton was ready to be a student instead of always trying to be the teacher. The boardroom felt different at 5 p.m. than it had at 9 a.m. The afternoon light came through the windows at a sharp angle, casting long shadows across the conference table. The 12 board members sat in the same positions, but the energy had shifted. They'd been waiting for Marcus's decision, and the waiting had made them restless. Marcus entered carrying a cardboard box and the toy soldier. The contrast to his usual polished presentation wasn't lost on anyone. Harold Thornton's eyebrows raised slightly, but he said nothing. Marcus set the box on the table and remained standing. Thank you for giving me the day to think. I know this situation has put the company in a difficult position, and I take full responsibility for that. Patricia Lansing folded her hands. Have you made a decision about stepping down? I have. But before I tell you what it is, I need to show you something. He opened the cardboard box and pulled out files, spreading them across the table. Financial reports, marketing materials, press releases, all featuring Marcus's face, Marcus's quotes, Marcus's vision for Thornton development. I spent the day looking at what I've built. Not just the buildings or the balance sheets, but the image. And I realized something. I built this company to be about me, my success, my reputation, my empire. He pulled out a photo from 3 years ago, himself at the Veterans Memorial Park dedication, shaking hands with veterans while photographers captured the moment. I donated $100,000 to that memorial, made a speech, got my photo in the papers, and I haven't been back since. Not once. Until today. Richard Montgomery shifted in his seat. What changed today? I met the people I hurt. I spoke with Mrs. Morrison, whose son died in Afghanistan. I talked with James McClellan, who runs the Iron Brotherhood, and I understood something I should have known all along. Charity isn't writing checks and getting publicity. Service isn't something you do for cameras. Real contribution requires actual sacrifice, actual time, actually giving of yourself. He placed the toy soldier on the table. This is Captain America. A 7-year-old boy with leukemia gave it to me today and told me it would help me remember to do the right thing. A child understands something I've forgotten. Character matters more than success. The room was silent. Harold's expression remained unreadable. So yes, I'll step down. Not temporarily. Permanently. The statement sent a ripple through the boardroom. Patricia started to speak, but Marcus raised his hand. Let me finish. I'll step down as CEO, effective immediately. But I want to propose something. Instead of leaving entirely, I'd like to work in the Community Relations Department. No executive role, no media presence, just actual work helping coordinate charitable efforts, working with organizations like the Iron Brotherhood, learning what real service looks like. You want to demote yourself? Richard asked, incredulous. I want to start over, build something meaningful instead of just profitable. This company bears my father's name. It should represent his values, honor, service, integrity. I lost sight of that. I need to rediscover it. Harold spoke for the first time. And if we say no? Marcus met his father's eyes. Then I'll resign entirely and volunteer on my own. But I'd like the chance to help repair the damage I caused while learning to be a better person. The company deserves that. The community deserves that. And honestly, I need it. Patricia exchanged glances with the other board members. This is unexpected. I know. But everything about the last 24 hours has been unexpected. I've learned more about myself in one day than in 20 years of success. And what I learned is that I don't like who I've become. I want to change that. The board members began whispering among themselves. Marcus sat down, suddenly exhausted. The toy soldier on the table caught the light, its tiny shield raised in permanent readiness. After several minutes of discussion, Harold called for quiet. We need to vote on this proposal. All in favor of accepting Marcus's resignation as CEO and reassigning him to community relations? 9 hands went up. 3 remained down. Motion carries, Harold said. Marcus, you'll work with Patricia to transition your CEO responsibilities over the next month. After that, you report to Sarah Chen in community relations. Clear? Crystal clear. Patricia stood, gathering her materials. We'll announce this tomorrow along with your press conference. What are you planning to say publicly? The truth. That I made a terrible mistake based on prejudice and arrogance. That I'm sorry. That I'm stepping down to make room for better leadership while I work on becoming a better person. And that I'm grateful to the Iron Brotherhood for showing me what real character looks like. Richard shook his head slowly. The media is going to tear this apart. People will say you're just trying to save face. Let them. I can't control what people think. I can only control my actions going forward. Marcus stood. If there's nothing else, I need to prepare for tomorrow. Harold walked him to the door. In the hallway, away from the others, his father spoke quietly. That took courage. Or desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. Harold put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. I'm proud of you. For the first time in a long time, I'm proud of you. The words hit Marcus harder than any boardroom criticism. He blinked back unexpected tears. I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. I know. Now you get to prove it. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Harold returned to the boardroom. Marcus walked to his office, soon to be someone else's office, and began preparing his statement for tomorrow. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Thornton Development headquarters. Marcus had insisted on the public lobby rather than a controlled venue. No barriers between him and the consequences. By 9:45, media from across the state had assembled. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled the folding chairs. The energy was predatory, hungry for blood. Marcus stood backstage, a small area behind a curtain set up for the occasion, going over his handwritten notes. No teleprompter, no prepared corporate statement, just the truth written on lined paper in his own hand. Jennifer appeared beside him. Sir, Mr. Thornton, they're ready for you. Jennifer, I want to apologize to you too. You tried to warn me about the Iron Brotherhood, and I ignored you. That wasn't leadership. That was ego. She smiled sadly. Thank you for saying that. When I transition out, I'm recommending you for a promotion. You deserve better than working for someone who doesn't listen. I appreciate that. Marcus took a deep breath, then walked through the curtain into the harsh lights. The murmur of conversation died immediately. Every eye fixed on him. Cameras clicked. Video lights blazed. He stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. Somewhere in the middle sat a reporter from the New York Times. Near the front, a local blogger who'd written scathingly about him. In the back, representatives from veterans organizations watching with hard expressions. Marcus set his notes on the podium but didn't look at them. My name is Marcus Thornton. 2 nights ago, I did something inexcusable. I ejected members of the Iron Brotherhood Motorcycle Club and Mrs. Helen Morrison, a Gold Star mother, from a charity event. I did this because I judged them by their appearance rather than their character. That action revealed something ugly about me, something I need to face publicly. He paused. The room remained silent. I want to be clear. This isn't a PR statement. This isn't about saving my company or my reputation. Those things are already damaged, and rightfully so. This is about owning what I did and taking responsibility for it. A reporter raised her hand. Marcus nodded. Are you apologizing because of the financial damage or because you're actually sorry? Both. I won't lie and say the financial consequences didn't wake me up. But yesterday, I met with James McClellan and Mrs. Morrison. I saw the grace with which they handled my cruelty. I spoke with Mrs. Morrison's grandson, who's fighting leukemia while still thinking about what it means to do the right thing, and I realized that my apology needs to be more than words. It needs to be action. Another reporter. What kind of action? Effective immediately. I'm stepping down as CEO of Thornton Development. Not temporarily, permanently. I'll be transitioning to a role in community relations where I can work directly with organizations like the Iron Brotherhood to support actual charitable work, not just write checks and take photo opportunities. The room erupted with questions. Marcus raised his hand. Please, let me finish. The noise subsided. I've spent 20 years building an empire based on success and image. I forgot that real value comes from character and service. The Iron Brotherhood embodies those things. They've raised millions for veterans and families. They've given time and effort to people who need help. They didn't do it for publicity. They did it because it's right. He pulled the toy soldier from his pocket and set it on the podium. A 7-year-old boy gave this to me yesterday. He told me it would help me remember to do the right thing. That child, fighting a terrible illness, understood something I'd forgotten. Being good matters more than being successful. Marcus looked directly at the cameras. To the Iron Brotherhood, thank you for showing me what real service looks like. To Mrs. Morrison, I'm profoundly sorry for causing you pain. You deserved better. To the community, I understand if you can't forgive me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to do better, to learn, to become someone worth respecting. He picked up the toy soldier again. This will stay on my desk as a reminder. Not of my failure, though that's important to remember, but of the fact that even a child can see what I couldn't. That courage means trying to do right, even when you've done wrong. Marcus stepped back from the podium. The questions came fast and loud. He answered them honestly, without deflection. Yes, he'd acted on prejudice. Yes, he deserved the criticism. No, he couldn't undo the damage. Yes, he would work with the Iron Brotherhood on their fundraiser. Yes, this was permanent. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. When it ended, Marcus walked off stage without the usual sense of performance. No checking how he'd sounded, no calculating the angles. He'd simply told the truth. Outside, his phone erupted with notifications. Some supportive, many still angry. But mixed in were messages from people he hadn't expected. Veterans organizations willing to meet with him. Community centers asking if he'd help with upcoming events. And one message from an unknown number that simply read, "Saw the press conference. Thursday, 7 p.m. Community Center. Don't be late." Chains. Marcus smiled despite everything. The next month would be hard. The transition, the scrutiny, the learning to be humble instead of powerful. But standing there, toy soldier in his pocket, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not hope that he could fix everything immediately, but hope that change was possible, that people could grow, that mistakes, while permanent in record, didn't have to be permanent in character. He had a long way to go. But at least now he was finally pointed in the right direction. If you've watched this far, it means this story resonated with you. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far," so I can get to know you and know who really appreciates these stories. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, and share this with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to become better. Subscribe for more stories about courage, redemption, and the power of choosing to change. Character count, 60 thou 38.